Just want to say Shabbat Shalom. Welcome everybody to my channel. We give all credit due to the Creator, the Most High. I know for my life, it's been really crazy. Surprised I even here. I'm sure I'm down to my last life. So I just want to give all credit to credit's due to the Most High for protecting me and teaching me, allowing me to grow. I'm going to say, everybody, if you're new here, welcome. I'm going to get into 2 books because sorry I haven't been doing a lot of videos. Just been trying to get a lot of stuff done, so I'm gonna get into 2 books. I got other videos I gotta make. So here we go. Alright, so we're getting into, don't worry about the symbols. These are just books. Alright, I don't worship these books. Okay? These are tools. The information in here is important, but the book, don't worship the book. It's nothing but a book. So let's get into it. This is Septuagint with the Apocrypha. We're gonna go to, it's gonna be a part 2 to a video I did. So here we go. We're starting from Judges, chapter 8, verse 22. And the men of Israel said to Gideon, "Rule, my Lord, over us both, thou and thy son, and thy son's son, for thou hast saved us out of the hand of the Midian." And Gideon said to them, "I will not rule, and my son shall not rule among you. The Lord shall rule over you." And Gideon said to them, "I will make a request of you, and do ye give me every man an earring out of his spoils." For they had golden earrings, for they were Ishmaelites. And they said, so when we talk about Ishmaelites, we try to say, we try to connect them to Moors. So it's plausible, but you know, we're still working out the details. But you know, everything has to be proven, so we're trying to get as much information to everyone as we can. Okay? For they had and if you look at people who I would say is the Moors, the Ishmaelites is the wavy. And if you look in Hollywood, majority of the stars are wavy afros. And they said, "We will certainly give them." And he opened his garment, and each man cast therein an earring of his spoils. Chapter 26. And the weight of golden earrings which he asked was 1,700 pieces of gold. So they had 1,700 soldiers, because everyone gave one, right? Besides the crescents and the chains and the garments and the purple cloth that were on the king of Midian. Now, come on now. These guys are trying to tell you that these are Europeans? No, wait, listen to this. Stop, like, whatever you got in the back of your head saying, no, and just listen. This is like your own, this is modern. This is like us now. We can look at the statues in the museum in America and show that they look like us. in the museums with chained up, gold everywhere. They said when they came here, gold, we just had gold everywhere. With gold chains, we're storing gold at them. Oh, give us a gun, we'll give it this boatload of gold. Okay? Now listen to this. And he opened up his garment, and each man cast therein an earring of his spoils. When we was children, when we was teenagers, right? We all had the earring on the left, right? Because the right man gave or some shit. I don't know. It was short lived for me, but and then after a while, we was doing both ears. People was doing both ears, the little diamond studs. Come on now, okay? Wait. And he asked, was 1,000, and you know how women look beautiful with the circle of earrings? Come on now. And the weight of the golden earrings which he asked was 1,700 pieces of gold, beside the crescents, and the chains, 2 chains, and the garments, and the purple cloth. Come on now, that we always have purple. We always was attracted to purple. When you was into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, who you liked, huh? 9 times out of 10, I bet you people like me like the purple one, huh? Donatello, right? With the staff, we was over there trying to use our staff. Come on now, how much hours I spent working with my staff because of the thing that I was blessed to be, you know what I mean, had in my life. Now, I was blessed because I never really attached to something, yet I gained from everything, and allowed me to be more open-minded, to see through the lies and the perversions that we are all sold. Alright? We kings, right? We wear purple. I used to be in the mainland. Used to have all the gangs, GD Folks, Vice Lords, and purple, right? That was the color. That was the royal color, and that was the color of the gang, purple. And was predominantly African American people, which are Afro-Aboriginal people of America. And besides the chains that was on their necks of their camels, but the camels had chains, right? You know, see the Moorish, Arab Moor pictures of the Afro people in the East, where they riding camels with chains. They got turbans, they got chains too. They smelling good. Come on now, don't we gotta look good? Like now, I try not to be so vain, and I'm trying to detach from everything, so that way when I regain whatever I want to hold on to, I can have already excreted or got rid of the poison that was taught to me and that was pumping through my veins. I was the best of the best of being, evil. I was such a good person. It's to where like we're so blinded where we think we're good. We think because we're good-hearted, because we make some good decisions. We think that we're good, we're holy, or that we have everything straightened out, but we don't realize how many avenues they come at us to pervert us, and we use a lot of what we're taught to destroy ourselves. So yeah, let's go. And Gideon made an ephod of it, and set it in the city of Ephrathah, and all of Israel went thither and whoring after it. Don't we do that today? Oh, let's get all these idols, hold it, Heru, Kane stone, oh, Jesus. We'll just go whoring after that. Instead of, like we're supposed to be taught, to find the spiritual presence within you and to seek the energy that comes from the grand designer. That's what we're supposed to do, not be swept away by a lot of what our ancestors had done. Not only have we taken elemental beings, all these different types of entities, giants, we also made our ancestors, our forefathers, gods, and worship them. So we gotta find that energy, that supreme energy that gives life to everything, and that's where you're gonna find peace. The pure energy doesn't say just suffer and wait for me and I'm gonna save you. He says you guys have to take it upon yourself and save yourself. Promote yourself and your talents. Associate with people who are like-minded. Build kingdoms, businesses together, promote each other's businesses, and work on family and your kingdom and your community. And then you work, and at the same time work on yourself, so you can love your mother better, honor your father better, love your wife better, teach your children more, create something, leave something for your family, and you can have your heaven on earth. He says, don't wait for me. That's why we gotta stop listening to what we're told. We gotta start reading. We gotta get back to the Old Testament. And we gotta use the many different Bibles and the translations. And we have to also learn evolution of languages so we can not be fooled anymore. I'm gonna help you as best as I can. And Midian was straightened before the chapter 8, verse 28. And the maiden was straightened before the children of Israel, and they did not lift up their head anymore. And the land had rest 40 years in the days of Gideon. So 40 years we worshipped ephods and we praised whatever they praised. I mean, how much things we praise today. And Jeroboam the son of Jones went and sat in his house. And Gideon had 70 sons begotten of his body, for he had many wives, and his concubines was in Sechem. Right? So we did a video about Sechem, right? We understand that Sechem is in America. Yeah, South America to be exact. And it sits right there on the ancient river where there's megaliths. And one of the oldest megaliths and the most grandest designs, bas-relief scriptures, which sits bordering Peru and where Cusco and all that is, and bordering Milo. What do we know about the house of Milo? So we're going to get into that. And she also bore him a son and gave his name Abimelech. And Gideon son of Joash died in his city and was buried in the sepulchre. So you see, we're buried in sepulchres, and I'm gonna drop that on the sepulchres of Hawaii of Joash his father in Ephrathah of Abi Estri. And it came in verse 33. And it came to pass when Gideon was dead that the children of Israel turned and themselves a covenant with Baal, that he should be their God. And the children of Israel remembered not the Lord their God, who had delivered them out of the hand of all that afflicted them round about. And they did not deal mercifully with the house of Jeroboam, the same is Gideon, according to all the good which he did to Israel. And Abimelech, son of Jeroboam, went to Sichem to his mother's brethren, and he spoke to them, to all the kindred of the house of his mother's father, saying, Speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Sichem, saying, Which is better for you, that 70 men, even all the sons of Jeroboam, should reign over you, or that one man should reign over you? And remember that I am your bone and your flesh. And his mother's brethren spoke concerning him in the ears of all the men of Sechin. All these words in their heart turned after Abimelech, for they said, He is our brother. And this is chapter 9, verse 4. One second. White tight tongue. My bad. It's gonna be quick. Okay. Alright, so I'm gonna turn you to this real quick. Okay, so this is Sechin. Okay, so this is gonna tell you about Sechin. It's also spelled Sichem, was a Canaanite city mentioned in the Amarna letters. So this is from the Amarna letters. Now that's real. And is mentioned in the Hebrew Bible as the Israelite city of the tribe of Manasseh. So the tribe of Manasseh lived here, okay? And the first capital of the kingdom of Israel, okay? But, well, I'm mistaken. Are they gonna show us? Let's see what they're gonna show us. So Sechem. They also show us all of this stuff. Okay, that's cool. Something here. You want to get clever at. Look. That's how they want to do it. Oh, right there. I get it. I got it. Sections. So that's 0 section. Okay. Now it says that. Remember, it said that Sechin was also spelled Sichem, right? Sichem. Sechin is the same thing. It's the same exact thing. The bas reliefs that's at Sechem is the bas reliefs at Sechin. The building methods is the building methods in the Bible. All right. I don't know what you heard, but let's continue. Chapter 9, verse 4. And they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Baal-berith. And Abimelech hired for himself vain and cowardly men, and they went after him. And he went to the house of his father, to Ephrathah, and slew his brethren, the son of Jerubbaal, 70 men upon one stone. But Joatham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. And all the men of Sichem, and all the house of Beth-maalo were gathered together, and they went and made Abimelech king by the oak of sedition, which was at Sichem. And it was reported to Joatham, and he went and stood on the top of Mount Gerizim, and lifted up his voice, and went and said to them, Hear me, young men of Sichem, and God shall hear you. Chapter 9, verse 8. The trees went forth one at a time to anoint a king over them. And they said to the olive, Reign over us. But the olive said to them, Shall I leave my fatness, which the men shall glorify God? So this whole chapter is talking about Sechin, okay? And when we were dealing in this area called Sechin, which is in South America. Is there anything else that I could read from that will prove that? I mean, I guess. Let's see what I can read. Let's see what that is. Now you seen those poorly built in the old section that they saying is the old world, and then you see these buildings, these type of buildings, huh? And these give credit to where credit's due. Right? Now what else could I read from? Let's see. How about When Rocks Cry Out by Horace Butler? Well, let's see what we can get out of this. Okay. So let's fast forward all the way to the end. Chapter 40. Jerusalem, famed fortress called the Milu. Alright? The Milu, a rampart consisting of two walls with space between them filled in. The name of the citadel of Sechem. The Milu at Jerusalem was some kind of fortification. The definite article before Milu indicates that it was a well-known fortress, probably that one had been built by the Jebusites. Now when we go into Wayne May and all of these Mormons, they prove artifacts of Jebusites in America, or Jaredites. Well, with these Jaredites, they show the different swords and metallurgy, which only gives credence to the story of our ancestors, not of history. Okay? The definition of the Milo is from the 1916 edition of the People's Bible Encyclopedia. Archaeologists and scholars have never found any remains of the Milo anywhere in the Middle East. That was inevitable, as the walls of the famed Milo still stand at Jerusalem, that was built by Egypt in Peru. The Milo was probably one of the most astonishing and unique walled fortresses ever built by ancient Egypt. Finding the Milo, the Egyptian fortress that was taken by David, would show once and for all which city was truly the Jerusalem of Adam, Egypt, King David, and of Christ. Protecting the north side of Peru's Cusco are the three monumental zigzagging walls. So, Cusco, there's zigzagging walls, okay? Right? So cleverly designed that they are practically impenetrable. The triple walls rise in successive stages and are made of finished boulders. Now I'm going to show you a video of this after this, okay? Some of which are as great as 5 meters high. Earth fills the space between the walls, forming terraces for soldiers. I'm gonna look some up real quick. All right. Oh man, this is crazy. Okay. To stand on, to protect the preceding terraces and walls below. The earth between the walls made it almost impossible to knock down the walls. The stones in the walls are so astonishingly massive, as so extraordinarily constructed, that these walls were sometimes mentioned with the other wonders of the ancient world. Seeing these cyclopean walls at Cusco, Jerusalem, allows comprehension of the strange biblical passage at 2 Samuel chapter 5 verse 6, which mentions placing blind and lame people on the walls. And the king of his men went to Jerusalem unto the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, which spake unto David, saying, except thou take away the blind and lame, thou shalt not come in hither. Hold on one second. The historian Josephus clarifies the extraordinary meaning of placing blind and lame persons on the wall of this famed fortress. Now, the Jebusites, who were inhabitants of Jerusalem and were by extraction Canaanites. Now, we all think Canaanites is Afro people, but hey, I beg to differ. Shut their gates and placed the blind and the lame and all their main persons upon the wall in way of derision of the king, and said that the very lame themselves would hinder his entrance into it. This they did out of contempt of his power, and as depending on the strength of their walls. Antiquities of the Jews, book 7, chapter 3, section. Josephus explains further, saying that David indeed could not take the walled fortress in Peru. Instead, David took the main city of Jerusalem that lay beneath the hilltop fortress. So he took the lower city by force, but the citadel held out still. Finally, David offered a prize for the warrior who could get past the earthen terraces between the walls of the Milu and reached the fortress on top of a hill. And David said on that day, whoever's go getteth up to the gutter and smiteth the Jebusites and the lame and the blind, he shall be chief and captain. 2 Samuel chapter 5 verse 8. Again, Josephus clarifies the curious gutter in that verse. The king promised that he who should go first over the ditches that were beneath the citadel, and should ascend to the citadel itself and take it, should have command of the entire people conferred upon him. Such was the fortress and the gigantic walled terraces that the ancient narratives call the Milu. How fortunate that the famed walls of the Milu still stand to serve the staunch witness to the truth of where ancient Egypt had built its capital city called Jerusalem. This Milu is also shown in carved scene inside the temple called Medinet Habu in the Sechin Egypt in the northeast Africa. Failing to comprehend that Ramses was attacking Egypt's own Thebes, Jerusalem, Breasted interpreted the Medinet Habu scene to be describing an Egyptian attack on a Syrian fortress, with Breasted presumed to be located somewhere north of Africa. Breasted wrote this about the scene. The king assaults the Syrian fortress on foot. He has left his chariot and shoot with the bow as he advances. The fortress rises in 4 successive battlements to a lofty citadel or a tower in the middle, from which waves a triangular banner. Here stands the chief and his companions. The walls are manned with bearded Semites, of whom offer incense to Ramses from the lowest battlements. The hieroglyphs inscription carved beside the fortress explains that the fortress under attack by Ramses belonged to the Amorites, who are most likely the Emirates they're talking about. Breasted interpreted, which is in the Septuagint, the name, which is an earlier translation of Amorites. Breasted interpreted the name of the people to be Amor, but indicated that he could not make out the last letter in the name. That's right, he couldn't make out the last letter because it was Emirates. The Bible places on such names as Amorite. I knew there were native Peruvian people whose traditions say they are descendants of the people called Amuru, but more important, I remembered biblical narratives that relate Jerusalem to the name Amor and Amorite, written in the Temple of Africa. The biblical narrative tells us, therefore, the 5 kings of the Emirates, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon, gathered themselves together and went up, they and their hosts, and encamped before Gideon and made war against it. Joshua chapter 10 verse 5. And thus said the Lord God unto Jerusalem, thy birth and thy nativity is the land of Canaan. Thy father was an Amorite, and thy mother an Hittite. Ezekiel something. The Amorite piece of the puzzle was fitted into place. I was not concerned that Breasted called the soldiers of the terrace walls Semites. Breasted and other historians frequently use the term to mean any number of kinds of people, including black Africans. They also frequently substituted the word Libyan as the name for the people that the hieroglyphs called Thun. The race is drained from scholarship. Historians will recognize the THNW to mean the Tahini people of West Africa. Likewise, another Egyptian term, Nahasu, was discarded by several Egyptologists and replaced by the word Negro. And Egyptians explain, and what was the place called? Negro land? Wasn't Amazon called Negro River? The Negro River? The great mixture of tribes who had their homes in the wide region of the Upper Nile have on the monuments the common name Nahasu. From the representations of them, we recognize the ancestors of the Negro race. I didn't have to worry about Breasted Semites description because on the Medinet Habu, temple, the scene showing the Milu shows the kind of man being taken as captives from that Jerusalem. Breasted describes these men to be the 4 black Africans, 2 Libyan Africans, and 1 lost image. Breasted clarified that the Egyptian hieroglyphs describe the first black African figure in the drawing to be the chief of Kush, the wretched. Kush was one more name for Peru's Cusco, which was often written as Cusco. On early maps of South America, Kush became Cusco. The African pointed out by Breasted to be the chief of Kush was the king of the city that was called at different times Jerusalem, Thebes, Kush, and Cusco. There was one final thought. The Milo is still standing, so wouldn't travelers to Jerusalem during the Middle Age have seen the Milo in Peru? Wouldn't they have written about those monumental walls? I found the answer in a book called The Itinerary of the Benjamin of Tudela, Travels in the Middle Ages. I have read this book to you guys. When Benjamin approached Jerusalem, he wrote this: "From thence it is 3 parasangs to Jerusalem, which is a small city fortified by 3 walls." Months later, I found other accounts of these great triple walls at Jerusalem. For some reasons, I had failed to consider that Josephus would have left an account of the walls. When I searched his writings, the curiously designed temple walls of Jerusalem in Peru came into view. There too, Jerusalem, Josephus wrote. The city of Jerusalem was fortified with 3 walls, on such parts as were not encompassed with impassable valleys, for in such places it had been 1 wall. The passable plain stretches out on the north side of Cusco, Jerusalem, where the 3 great stone walls of the Milo were built to protect against an attack coming across the plain. Certainly the impassable valleys that Josephus mentioned are obvious at Cusco. An ancient wall that protected the lower city at Jerusalem, at Cusco, Jerusalem, was well known and had been mapped. So before we read this, I want to take a look at this video by Brian Forster.
The High Gate in the Inca language. Inking things. In front of you. Okay, this location is called the Inti Punku, or the Hatun Punku. Inti Punku means the gate of the sun. Hatun Punku means the high gate in the Inca language. So this is a day in the life of Hidden Inca Tours. This is our first stop. This is the ancient Inca gate that protected Cusco from attack from the south. But what we'll see is there are megalithic elements as well as Inca elements. So here you clearly see the Inca period construction. The Inca supposedly evolved as a civilization around Lake Titicaca on the island of the sun, the island of the moon, and the little town of Copacabana. So they fled north because the Aymara people were attacking them about 1,000 years ago. They sent people to go forward, and that's when they found the megalithic aspect that we see behind us. And they kept following
You guys suck. Just let it out. Don't be ashamed. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. You feel better.
Hey, what's up, my friend Cal? Welcome to a day in the life of hidden Inca aspect that we see behind us. And they kept following a road that was already in existence, and that's when they discovered the abandoned megalithic city of Cusco. So rather than finding a virgin territory and then build a city, which they named Cusco, there they found an abandoned megalithic site with many megalithic ruins like this along the way from Lake Titicaca to what became Cusco. But they found a lot of megalithic constructions, and that's why they decided to build their city of Cusco, the capital, in that location rather than the Sacred Valley, which would have been more logical because the Sacred Valley is where almost all of the food is grown. And what better way to see this amazing place, the Inti Punku, than from the air utilizing the little quadcopter, Wiracocha. So as Wiracocha climbs up on top, you can see that there's an ancient Inca canal. So it was a multifunction site, not just a gate, but it was also a place of tribute, a place where those who were to use the Inca road were inspected to make sure they didn't have disease, and where they paid a tax. You see the very large stairs that go up? That's classic Inca style construction. And of course, as previously stated, the megalithic parts are quite obvious. Now it's back in the van and heading further south. The Inti Punkus of... So here we are in the main plaza. Okay, now we're in the little town of Andahuaylias, which is a colonial city, almost 500 years old. And here we're going to see the famous Waiki skeleton.
So I just wanted to show you this.
Territory, and then build a city, which they named behind us. And they kept following a road The Inca supposedly evolved as a civilization around Lake Titicaca on the island of the sun, the island of the moon, and the little town of Copacabana. So they fled north because the Aymara people were attacking them about 1,000 years ago. They sent people to go forward, and that's when they found the megalithic aspect that we see behind us. And they kept following a road that was already in existence, and that's when they discovered the abandoned megalithic city of Cusco. So rather than finding a virgin territory and then build a city, which they named Cusco, there they found an abandoned megalithic site with many megalithic ruins like this along the way from Lake Titicaca to what became Cusco. But they found a lot of megalithic constructions, and that's why they decided to build their city of Cusco, the capital, in that location.
All right. So you just heard that from Brian Forrester. Let's finish up this book. The Jerusalem puzzle had come together around the famed Milo of the Old Testament. Then something fortunate happened. Driving from Dallas, I decided to visit a library that was along the route. I asked the special collections librarian if they had any antique maps of ancient Jerusalem, and they did. There were two illustrations. One showed the layout of Jerusalem during the Middle Ages, and the other drawing depicted the interior of the temple at Jerusalem during that same era. The map had been brought to America by French colonists who settled at Dallas. What I saw on that old layout of Jerusalem stunned me. The map showed three monumental zigzagging walls at the north end of the city. Here were the famed zigzagging walls of Cusco on an early map of the city called Jerusalem. Not only did the map show the unique triple walls, it also identified other ruins on that hill at Cusco, including the temple fortress called Zion and David's sepulchre. The library gave me copies of the two maps. Back home, I sat quietly, shaking my head. I do this all the time. After years of sifting through the stones of America and Egypt, the picture of ancient Jerusalem standing in a mountain in South America lay in plain view on my table. Finally, the meaning of the prayer, which had said the search was not about Egypt, and which seemed to have come so long ago, became clear. The Jerusalem that Egypt built, the city coveted and ruled by David, the city who